Welcome to Boss Academy Radio. I'm your host, Paul Kirch, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Today, you are in for a special treat. But before we get to that, BOSS stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies. That's what this show is all about. I started this show to really help empower entrepreneurs and give them the tools and the things that I didn't have when I got started. See, I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial background. I had a dad who was a school teacher, a mom who stayed at home. We did have a family business in the summer, but it was the worst example of how you would run an entrepreneurial business. No offense to my parents. You know, I sit there and think back to us collecting money. We had this vegetable farm, and we'd collect money from people that bought vegetables. And my parents put the money in a little tin can and put it up in the cabinet. And that's how we managed our money, you know. And then when there was enough money, we'd go to the bank. And it was not exactly the ideal mentorship for entrepreneurship. So when I started my own company back in 2009, I vowed I was going to make a difference. I was going to help give tools and help provide assets to entrepreneurs. And so that's what Boss Academy is here for. And we're really grateful to get amazing thought leaders on and guests like our guest today, Tian Pierce. She is a life and empowerment coach, and she is the founder of Tap Into Purpose. And she's one of my favorite people. I've actually gotten a chance to meet Tian in person. We've stayed friends, and I've just got so much respect for what she's doing. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about how she's going through her own transformational journey. And it's amazing when you see somebody who's a life coach and you think they've got it all buttoned up. But what she's learned is that life throws lessons at you and challenges and hurdles. She's been focusing her business on empowering women, but what she's really discovered is that there's another audience that she thinks she can make a bigger impact with, and that she's finding really it resonates more with her business. So Tian, welcome to Boss Academy.
Thanks, Paul.
So grateful you're here. So talk a little bit about this new audience that you've discovered is really your core audience that you think you can make the biggest impact with.
Well, I've been working with teenagers and 20-somethings on the side for quite some time, almost since the beginning of my coaching career. And I always treated them like they were a little side, or I'd do a favor here, or I'd get connected with a recommendation there. And over time, what I realized is that these kids are out starting a new life, just like we all did, but it's a completely different world out there for them. And we, as parents, we're not parenting them for a world that involved screens, constant contact. And so how do we, from the very basic level of etiquette, all the way up to how and when does an interview start, which, by the way, it starts the moment you get in your car to drive to the interview, from emotional intelligence. They're interacting so much with screens that they're finding it more and more difficult to put themselves out there relationship-wise. And for the most part, we're still always in relationship with one another. Most of us get jobs where we do have to deal with other people, even if we're in our own cubicle or working from home. There is an element of relationship. And how do we get these kids prepared so that they know themselves well enough to know what they want and they're not compromising, and we get them strong enough where they've got the emotional intelligence to be leaders within the business, a lot of it based on relationship and how they carry themselves.
You know, Tiana, I'm going to make you comfortable the rest of the interview. I'm just going to go like obviously, this is the audience we've been working with. My nephew came and visited us this summer, and love him to death, but he's 18, and he spent the whole time with his face buried in the phone. We would go off and do things. We went down to Houston and went to an amusement park, and I'd turn around when he wasn't on a ride. There he is, face buried in the phone. And I'm like, seriously, you can't put that thing down. And my wife and I have been guilty of that in the past. But the way that kids interact today, and they've tied so much depression and stress and things related to the way that youth interact, because their interactions are not all in. You know, you and I, when we were growing up, if we're talking to somebody, you're all in. You're there in the conversation. But today, everybody's so fragmented and pulled in different directions. Talk about how you're addressing that.
Well, I think depending on the child, and I say child, from 13 up to 20 something, they need
My
to
wife
know.
would say up to 46, which is my age, but
Exactly.
just saying.
So they need to know that that connection is what is going to get them a job. And it's also what's going to ultimately make them feel better about themselves, because we are people that need relationship. And you're right, everyone is kind of doing this half-hearted thing, either to protect themselves or to keep their options open. But when they're stuck in half-hearted, they can't be in a position where they're risking it all in terms of really getting out there, doing the best job at work. The screens are just miserable, because most of the kids, all of us are being interviewed by people that for the most part, again, weren't raised that way. So one of the things that I think is really interesting, I have a daughter who works in the admissions department at her university, and they were doing a big group interview of really switched on, engaged kids, leaders on campus, to become tour guides. What those kids didn't know is they planted my daughter out in front. She's one of them. They walked in the door, all these kids. The interview had started. My daughter's job was to know whose nose was in the screen, who was sitting there engaged, saying hello to other people. These are going to be kids that are engaging with parents and prospective students. If they're sitting there all curled up, forget it. From a physiological sense, if we're doing this before an interview, we've got all sorts of fight or flight stuff going on, and basically our brain is saying up, shut down, be small, save space. But in actuality, when you go into an interview, right, you want to be like wide open, and you want to have this victory stance. You want to flush your brain with some really fantastic hormones that are like, yeah, I've got this. But we're not telling our kids 2 minutes of this in the bathroom is so much better than 5 minutes of this.
It's the physiology. I mean, you said it right there. I mean, that's a big piece of it. And I think the difference between adults and kids today is we grow up knowing that there's a different way, and we my wife and I, like I said, sometimes we're guilty of burying our face in the phone like everyone else, but we have a sense of guilt about it, and we know that there's a better way. I think a lot of the kids today don't necessarily understand that they should be doing it differently, that's what they know, that's what their friends do, that's how they interact, and they don't even realize they're missing out on that. So opening their eyes to that, I think, is so empowering, and it's such a needed piece. And on your website, you actually say that the questions we ask define us. I think that that's such an important element in terms of just defining human nature, human success. The questions we ask ourselves, the words we say to ourselves. But, it seems to me that living in a digital age, kids are not necessarily even taking the time to really ask themselves the right questions, because they're so busy just interacting, but not interacting in a way that's really engaging.
Right. And there's a whole lot of interacting in terms of what's getting me into college. Or if you're in college, I'm engaging in a way that's going to get me, a Fortune 500 job or what have you. And I think why I'm also so interested in the high school level is because when these kids are going off to college and universities, what is happening, even with our very best and brightest, so you're getting kids into Ivy League schools that come September or the beginning of October feel like they've been kicked in the gut. They've never been average. They don't know how to do average. And they've had every minute scheduled for them their whole lives. And they're sitting there going, who am I? Who am I now? And then you take that further. I've got clients that are in their early 20s. They've graduated from prestigious institutions. They are now in a career that maybe they don't like. And this is the first time that they've ever had to doubt themselves. And if you're rocking in a corner because you've made a really bad decision, but you have no muscle memory on, oh, I remember I made a decision that didn't really work out for me. I remember I had to do X, Y, and Z. If you're not having that muscle memory to rely on when you're 23, 24, 25, you've really been given a disservice, because now you're sitting over there going, not, oh, I got to make a move. This job isn't fulfilling. You know, what else is out there for me? Now you're having a quarter life crisis. And where does that leave you? You know, because now you're snowballing into what should be a really dynamic point in time for you.
Yeah, I think I can't even imagine. You know, we always say as adults, it's like, oh, I'd love to be young again, but I wouldn't want to be that young. I wouldn't want to be a high schooler. I wouldn't want to go through that. And I'll be honest with you, I think the challenges that kids face today and the struggles they face are so different than what we knew growing up. But, you know, they don't know anything different. So to be fair, you know, that's the world they live in. But finding ways to help them get beyond that, I think, is so key. So you've built a business out of empowerment, and you were working with women, and you decided that this audience could benefit more from you, that you could relate with them and connect with them and make a bigger impact. Obviously, you are a parent, you have kids, so you saw this as an opportunity. From a business perspective, what have you learned from this transition from one audience to another? Has there been any challenges? Is it an ongoing process? What's the big hurdle that you face, so entrepreneurs out there listening to this can take away something?
Oh my gosh. I might not be the poster child for this. I would say what I learned, if I'm very honest, is that I held on a little too long. So I created this baby. We all know what it's like to have your own business. It is like a child. You are up 24 hours with it. You love it. You birth it. And when I realized that probably I should be going in a different direction, I probably held on 9 months to a year too long. Kind of eking out, well, maybe if I try this or maybe if I do that. When it became more and more clear, and I do believe that there is something that if the path starts taking you off in a certain direction, you should really examine it. And I kept bringing it back to what I wanted it to be and what I thought it should be. And clearly, I'm my own boss. I get to decide that. But at a certain point, this is giving me as much joy, and I am empowering as many, if not more, kids. So what was I waiting for? But, you know, I like to stick my heels in and go, no, it's going to be my way.
You're not the only person. I mean, I've faced that too. And I think it just comes back to sometimes we see something isn't working. And at least I know from a male perspective, and this is one of the reasons that men get in trouble with their wives a lot, is we try and fix everything. And my inclination was, and when something isn't working, well, I just need to fix it. But maybe there's another direction. Maybe there's another purpose and another reason we should be doing what we do. And it sounds like that's kind of what you faced as well, is that you knew that this was the direction you ultimately wanted to go, but you thought you could make what you had work better, I'm sure.
Right.
Because I know that's what I've done.
Right.
And I think it's I think that 9 months was probably one of the most valuable lessons that you learned, because that 9 months is something that down the road, when you face this again, you're not going to go through that. But I've done the same thing. I have a sales consulting business that was flourishing, and then it started floundering. And when it was floundering, I was like, okay, so what is it that I'm doing differently? And it wasn't that I was doing something different. You know, the difference is I was not as in love with the model. I wasn't convinced that the way that I was running that business was the right way. So I made a transition, but it took me a long time as well. And my transition went from one-on-one consulting engagements with, you know, mid-sized companies, working with the C-level executives, the owners and managers, to building programs that actually empower and help the people that are out in the streets doing the selling, one-person shops, solopreneurs, helping them as well. And so I hung on far too long as well, but I think it was a necessary evil. And I think in retrospect, at some point, you're going to look back and say the same thing, that you had to do what you did to make sure that you were making the right decision. Because
Right.
It's a big choice to move away from your primary business model.
It is. And it's a bit like breaking up. You got to make sure it's over, because you don't want to keep, going back out and breaking up, and and that's not to say I'm blessed, because I've got this great practice where I would happily work with another woman for sure, in whatever needs she has. But in terms of the website, or the marketing, or that kind of stuff, hanging on, because you know what? I was sitting kind of easy on a website that was completed, or marketing that made sense, and I knew what I was doing. So now I'm back out there, and I'm at college campuses, and how fun is that? And it makes me feel completely alive again. So that's where I need to be, and that's where I get revved up again, and that's when I come home and go, oh my gosh, I had the best day, because I'm hanging around with a bunch of college kids, and I love that.
Yeah, and I just spoke at Baylor University down in Waco, Texas. They invited me down. A marketing research organization I belong to asked me to go down and speak to this group of students, and I was anticipating it was going to be 50 people in this room, and there's almost 400 people sitting in this auditorium, and it was a lot of fun. But at the end, what was really a rush is I got several comments about how it was such a life-changing presentation, because to them, the stuff we take for granted and the stuff that we think they don't care about, I mean, they're just learning. They're wanting to get their career started off right. So they're taking that advice to heart, and it was super exciting. And, sometimes we struggle to get the adult buyers to take that same kind of passion and excitement with it. But it was really, I totally get what you're saying. And you're not going to touch all of them, but the ones that you do impact, it's really such a, it's a life-changing thing for you too. So I think what you're doing is great. I'm a big believer in helping the youth of today get off on the right foot, because I think that there's so many hurdles that they face, and they do come out with challenges that we couldn't relate to because we weren't there and we're not living the way they do. And technology being one piece of that. So I think it's amazing that they get the opportunity to work with somebody to help empower them. But that being said, let's talk about, if you don't mind, how life sometimes gets in the way. All right, Tian, one of the joys of being an entrepreneur is you have, obviously, flexibility, freedom, you're in control, all great things. But every entrepreneur that I know has gone through some period of challenge. If you're facing personal issues and you're a solopreneur, it can be detrimental. I went through about a 12-month period where I was dealing with some things on the personal front that were really impacting my business, and it makes it really hard to stay on track. I know you've gone through your own challenges and hurdles. Talk a little bit about, in those moments, what is it that you do to stay on track? And it's an ever-growing process, an ever-struggling process. How are you facing those challenges head-on as you go forward?
Well, I think no matter what role, like you're saying, you're in, you're dealing with this. So even though people look to me like I've got my life together, hey, I get whacked from behind or the side or what have you. Just the nature of the peaks and valleys of sending kids off to school. Got 3 in college, 1 still at home. They come back for vacation. The apple cart is rattled a bit. I do it sometimes, I remain focused better at sometimes than others. But when I really feel like I'm reeling, what really helps for me is to go, what do I need right now? Because sometimes the most important thing to do is detach from work for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, a half hour, a day, get what I need to get done, and then come back and go, now what do I need now? And that's a question you can ask yourself many times throughout a day. What is it that I need to be doing right now? And I think it's very easy to get sidetracked. And as an entrepreneur, I'm guilty of sometimes looking for something that gets me off track because I don't want to deal with what's in front of me. So it's, what do I need to do right now? And then you do that 15 minutes later. Sometimes you need to say, okay, what is it I need to do right now?
I think it's important. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think it's important entrepreneurs give themselves that permission. I struggle with the idea that I feel guilty as an entrepreneur when I'm not working. That's a dangerous mindset. It's a very debilitating mindset at times. But as an entrepreneur, you are responsible for the success of your company, especially if you don't have a team to rely on. And I know that not everyone sees it that way, but I know there's plenty that do, where you almost feel a sense of guilt if you're not at the office. And, I make a lot of sacrifices that the kids don't always understand because of that. So I think that's an important distinction, is giving yourself permission to detach, giving yourself permission to step away. And it's critical. And, one of the things that in sales, sometimes if you're in a sales role and you're beating your head against the wall, no one's picking up the phone, no one's responding to your messages, getting away from the office and clearing your head is one of the most critical things you can do. So it really applies to being an entrepreneur as well. Sometimes just walking away from it and then coming back when you're clear-minded.
Right. And honestly, it sounds too simple, but there are times when what you need to do is go for a walk or take a nap or get a good night's sleep or go play with your kids. And if you're really honest with yourself, you can also answer that like, actually, I need to get back to the office. There are things that I've been avoiding. I really need to get those things done so that I can make the best use of my time so I can sleep tonight. Because I also think as an entrepreneur, as a what did you call it? A solopreneur. Yeah. Sleep is something that doesn't always come naturally.
Sleep's the sacrifice, right? It's like, well, because everybody tells you, it's like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, you need to be up early, you need to be hitting it hard, and then you're laying there in bed thinking about work, and just you never escape it. And so that's so true. And sleep is definitely something that I struggle with. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm so tired I just fall asleep at home watching TV with my wife. Other times, I'm making that sacrifice and putting other things in front of sleep. But taking care of your body, your mind, your spirit, those things really matter. And they probably matter more as an entrepreneur than in other roles because they're the things that it's easy for you to slack on. And they're easy to say, there's time to sleep when I'm dead. I've heard that phrase. I've said that phrase. But the truth be told, you're going to be dead sooner if you don't start getting sleep and take care of yourself.
And I think we are the face of our businesses.
Yeah.
So if I'm standing in line somewhere and short-tempered and someone catches me out and they go, wait a minute, isn't that woman who's a life coach and she's supposed to have everything together? Why would I go to her? And there's a lot of pressure being the brand. And you can't be the brand of the business if you're falling apart, like you're saying, with sleep, with fun. The good thing now about YouTube, you can hit a 30-second video that is dumb and it will make you laugh. You do that before you get on a call with someone. Oh my gosh, you've just cleared the air, got some laughter back no matter what's going on in your life. And those are just little life hacks. But yeah, all that does matter because we are the faces of our businesses.
Yeah, and one of the smartest things I did was I bought a stand-up desk. It's I think the company's called Uplift out of Austin, but they have electric desks that raise and lower. I just bought the frame. I already had a desk and mounted it to it. It's amazing. So I'm here.
I've been looking into those. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it keeps your energy level up. It helps with your metabolism. I used to get so tired and I had to have multiple cups of coffee during the day. Well, I had this. My eye was twitching like crazy, and I went to the doctor, and he says, he goes, you're getting too much caffeine or not enough sleep. I'm like, probably both.
Yeah, pick one.
So now I'm down to 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and I don't need coffee because when I'm tired, I stand up, and it's amazing how much it invigorates you. So finding ways to work within your budget, within your means. And look, we both, I think you know Matt Zalewski. He's a good friend of mine, and he'll have a headset on, and he gets down and does push-ups while he's on the phone when other people are talking.
Yeah.
Now he's in good shape. He doesn't get winded. I might get winded if I'm doing it, but you can't tell. He's down doing push-ups, but he does these things to keep his energy level at a peak state.
Right. And that's the other thing that we also, it's easy to go, you know what, I'll exercise tomorrow. And you know, it's not like you've got to train for a half marathon or a marathon, but I think it helps to do something with your body to a point that you are aware that you have a body, because you do take care of something that you are aware of. And that makes such a big difference for then, like you're saying, how you come to a meeting, how you respond in a meeting. If you're feeling strong and whole, it's so much easier than lethargic or over caffeinated, exhausted. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So obviously having kids in college, that's a form of stress right there. You obviously dealing with a lot of hurdles. I mean, I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, so my situation's different type of stress, but it doesn't change the fact that you're paying for kids to be in college. So you're motivated to keep your business moving forward. How much does that drive you, or are you driven by the passion for your business? What really motivates you to keep going?
I wish I could say I was driven by money. I think it would be, in some ways, easier if I really felt compelled to make the money. I feel so passionate about getting out there and talking to people, women, these 20-somethings that we're talking about, teens. So for me, it's really about this compulsive need to connect and empower. But as an entrepreneur, you know, how do you do that where people aren't like, wow, you know, okay, you know, so again, it comes down to that I'm motivated by what I can help people achieve, but it throws me right back in okay, so how do I do that? How do I get them to believe that this is important? And, you know, and then we spin around. So, yes, the money is important, but I just absolutely feel empowered, or the need to empower others.
I think that's great. I mean, I think the fact that you're not driven by the money, puts your heart in the right place, allows you to make a big impact. Of course, you need to make money. I mean, obviously, being broke and poor does not allow anybody to serve well. It doesn't mean you can't serve. You have to serve in different ways. But having money or making money allows you to make a bigger impact. So don't let it drive you, but let it be something that is just a reality that's part of your business. Tian, we really appreciate you being on. Of course, you know I adore you, love what you're doing. Tell people how they can learn more about you so they can find a little bit more about how they can work with you.
Well, my website is www.tapintopurpose.com. And like me, it is in transition. You can reach me there. I'm on Facebook, both personally at Tian Pierce and professionally at Tap Into Purpose. And I love connecting with people that way. You can, on my website, get a hold of my email address there. And yeah, I would love to connect. Even if it's a question, please connect.
You know, what's funny, I've known you a long time, and I just now put 2 and 2 together that Tap Into Purpose, Tap came out of your name.
It did.
So funny that it's like this little light bulb clicks on. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was smart. It's a great name. It's a great name anyway. So
actually, thank you. My coach came up with that. It's short for Teresa Ann, my nickname Tian, but I do go by Tian. And I have a life coach because every coach should have a coach. She actually came up with that.
Absolutely. Well, Tian, thank you so much for being on Boss Academy Radio. We really appreciate it. Look, if you're new to the show, BOSS stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies. Tian is bringing success strategies to her clients and the people she's working with. And we encourage you to go out to bossacademy.com and learn a little bit more about what we're doing, because this show is all about the entrepreneur. We're here to inspire you, make a difference in your life, give you the tools that I didn't have when I started my company. BOSS, once again, stands for Business Ownership Success. Stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies. If you like what you hear, go out to iTunes. We're at bossacademy.com/iTunes, or you can come out to bossacademy.com, subscribe, follow our expert network, and get more great insights like the ones you just got here from Tian. So once again, thank you again for being a part of the show. Once again, we always ask you to be mindful that BOSS stands for Business Ownership Success Strategy, but our goal is to really be the last boss you'll ever need. So once again, my name is Paul Kirch. I am host and founder of Boss Academy. I hope you have an amazing day.
Bye.